Ooh, hey YouTube, we are dragging ass tonight. Welcome to live recording of Death Metal Dicks like we do on YouTube every week. YouTube. Got to, for those who are familiar, pull the old link up here and then share it on social media. And my phone's fucking still logged into the Death Metal Dicks one, and you keep erasing the history because you look up embarrassing shit. So I have to type the whole thing in every time.
No, I just straight up put pause the history or whatever, because I keep forgetting I'm logged into that shit and I look up some other shit and I'm like, fuck, man. I don't know, dude. I don't know how the internet works that great, but whatever.
Yeah, well, here we are. We're going to record an episode about mostly Skinwalker Ranch, man. I get tired of repeating myself, so I'll say it in the podcast. But, however, this was a slipperier. That's a word, right? It was a slipperier slope than I had planned on, man, because, I just started reading and then would read some shit and be like, what? That's not true. And then Google just that, and then it would be true.
Yeah. And
I was just sitting there, Alex Jonesing out.
Oh, yeah. It's, with this topic, it's pretty easy to do. Whenever I first, stumbled upon it, man, it was, we were sitting down trying to figure out, some weird folklore shit with Native American stuff and evil shit for our band.
Yeah.
And, I was like, dude, this is so fucking wild.
We've known about it forever.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Buddy are old school conspiracy guys. We used to drive the country late at night, listen to Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah.
We used to listen to InfoWars, right when that came out of Coast to Coast AM. And all he would talk about is aliens and Sasquatches and the Illuminati and satanic sacrifices and shit way before he was politicized. He was against every politician. Now, I don't like Alex Jones, but back then, he would have guests on. He would do shit like this. And so, I've known about Skinwalker Ranch for forever. Always been interesting, but I fell off a conspiracy theory. So what happened with me, or actually, let's do that on the podcast. Let's just go ahead and start recording. Welcome to YouTube. We're going to start the podcast, and then you're going to watch along like you always do. Welcome, and we'll talk to you. If you have comments, put them in, and then afterwards, we'll talk to you about the comments if you want to talk back to us. We don't really do it during the podcast because, it's podcast. So we'll catch up with you guys after this. Have fun. Get fucked up. Let's do it. Welcome to Death Metal Dicks.
I didn't even join in. I'm sorry.
What the fuck? Hey, man, we're happy to be back in your ears on this podcast. Another exciting episode, Death Metal Dicks. Welcome back into the void with Christopher Pierce
and Buddy Lloyd.
This week, my friends, we have taken a turn of the abnormal. Are we tired of covering serial killers and murders? Absolutely not. But is there more things to talk about? Absolutely. Is it our podcast? Absolutely.
We do whatever the fuck we want.
Fucking right. As long as it's entertaining. But we have done a couple of episodes about conspiracies before, and they just get huge. I don't know. I'm not great at the internet, and you're terrible at the internet.
I'm fucking awful at it, man.
So we did an episode on Missing 411 was the most conspiratorial one that we've done. And that's murder related because so many people just go missing from national parks and never get found again. And their clothes are found. It was a great episode. If you haven't heard that, if you're new, go back and listen to Missing 411. But I don't know what forum this is getting posted on. I don't use Reddit at all. So I would assume a Reddit. I mean, I'll Google the podcast to try to figure out what's going on. So if you know what the fuck's going on with the Missing 411 episode and why it keeps flourishing and getting brought up over and over again, let me know. I think people love Sasquatch. I think people love conspiracies. And we do too, but in a different way than most. Yeah. So this week we decided to go in for another conspiracy because we know that you want it. We want it too. And if we're all on the same page, why not talk about some current shit that's super spooky that even though it's been in the media within the last month, here's the thing with social media, mainstream media, all the sources of news. Now, I, of course, think that all forms of media were invented for the government to tell you how to feel about certain things. I mean, from the early printing press that they used to print the New Testament, which was a direct way to tell you to obey X, Y, and Z, or you would go to hell. Government control.
Ready.
Yeah, I'm ready to go to hell too, my brother. And then on and on in history, propaganda is always the leading source of media advancement. Not going to take you down that conspiracy road. The way media is today, something will flash into the news. It'll sit there for one day. The most interesting story you've ever heard. The internet will freak out about it, and then someone will touch somebody, or Donald Trump will say shithole, and all this actual interesting story will go down the shitter. It'll never be seen again. And back in December, something that ties into what we're talking about tonight came out. And it's absolutely insane. And when I heard it the day it came out, I was blown the fuck away. How am I hearing about this on CNN instead of InfoWars or Coast to Coast AM or a website that ends in .info or .news? It's real shit. And it's been brought to the forefront, and people don't give a fuck. They care more about what the celebrity is doing today. Yep. And or maybe they don't, and that's just what's forced down our throats so much that we're in this pattern of thinking what we're told to think. But I did not forget. I read the story and got, again, totally sidelined. And so what I wanted to talk about tonight, you've probably figured out by now, is Skinwalker Ranch. We're going to talk about Tom DeLonge from Blink-182, Jesse Ventura, and the millions upon millions of virgins that believe in aliens worldwide. Skinwalker Ranch, a.k.a. Sherman Ranch, a.k.a. Gorman Ranch, is obviously a ranch. It's located in Utah, and it has experienced every single type of paranormal activity. I'm talking about ghosts, skinwalkers, aliens, big feet. Anything you can think of that you would associate with something beyond humanity.
Even fucking werewolves.
Even werewolves. Anything. Except I have never heard of a Frankenstein Skinwalker Ranch, but I'm sure we may find some human genetic tampering by the time we're done with this whole thing. It's all there. All of it. And the property is currently owned by Robert Bigelow, who is a hotel tycoon turned space main. I'm talking about this guy went from owning a giant amount of hotels, a conglomeration, being super rich, turned that into being involved with all things space, intergalactic, UFO, in cahoots with the government to the highest echelon. I mean, now he works for NASA. Before he worked through NASA, the way that he channeled his way up the government, just being a private citizen, is absolutely bananas. And that's what we're going to talk about here tonight, buddy.
I cannot wait for these virgins to get a date. We're going to set everybody up tonight with a date, man, because the truest of true, we're going to fucking cover a topic that you can't even screw.
Before we get into the thick of it, of course, we're going to have to run over some business. First of all, our live show in Bentonville, Arkansas, Bike Rack Brewing. It is January 28th. That's a Sunday night. There's 2 shows. I'm honestly not 100% sure of the format. What I do know is it's free, and we're trying to do a whole reservation setup thing, and it's too much. So it's first come, first serve. I keep updating you with the information that I have, but from what I understand right now, there's one show. The doors will be at 7 o'clock, and Bike Rack Brewing's big. They have got a brew house with a stage, and that's where they do comedy shows. They have bands that come play there. So it's inside the brew house. They make beer. It's a giant warehouse, and they put out chairs. It's really nice. Good sound. So we're going to be in there, and the format of the show is going to be a stand-up comedy show. You'll get to see me do some comedy. You'll see our producer Mark do some comedy. See Sam Talent do some comedy. And then, after that, we're going to record a podcast. Now, originally, I thought we should do 2 podcasts. We got 2 funny comedians that'll be there. That'll be an interesting one to do and put them out for patrons. However, I started thinking about time constraints, and often, we basically try to fit every episode of this podcast within an hour, and rarely anymore does that happen. We just blow that out. I write what I think is going to be 60 minutes of content, and sometimes it goes on for 90 plus. So I don't want to make anyone suffer by trying to rush it. And Sam Talon, who's going to be the guest on the podcast, he chose JonBenet Ramsey for the crime. And that's thick. So here's what I can say is that I hate to brainstorm with you guys. If you have suggestions, let me know. I think we should do 1 comedy show, then do the live podcast, and then do another comedy show. And let the podcast, maybe 2 hours for the podcast, right? So you could come in at 7 o'clock, okay? And you could watch a great comedy show. And I think people will show up from the advertisements of it just being a comedy show that the Bentonville comedy page puts out.
Where is that? So the advertisements are the Bentonville comedy page. I can't find anything online about it.
Yeah, they have there's nothing. The way that this, I feel like I'm rambling. The way that this group that does comedy shows promotes shows, it doesn't matter who the comedian is, what is going on there. They just run a universal ad. They do a comedy night. It's like comedy night. It doesn't say any names. They're not a club. They're not trying to tout one thing. It's one guy who kind of made this organization. He knows what he's doing. He knows how. He's like a marketing major. He knows how to spike people's interest in shit. So he does that. And they were going to set it up with all this stuff, but it's out of the norm for them. So he doesn't do it himself. He has a web guy do it. This is just so much to say on a podcast. But anyway, and that doesn't matter. The thing is that it's going to be, everyone that's listening to this in Northwest Arkansas, which is a lot of you, you know about it. And whatever we post about it, you just follow those instructions. If anything changes, you'll be updated. But from what I understand, there's going to be 2 shows. I want you to come watch me do comedy, and then I want you to stay for the podcast. I think the best way to do it, and it may not be this way, is to do the comedy show up top. That's going to take, we'll try to keep it to 70 minutes, and then do the podcast. So if you come in at 7, we start the comedy show at 7:30. We're over with the comedy show by 8:20. We start the podcast by 8:30. We do the podcast from 8:30 to 10, and then do the second comedy show rather than do a comedy show, podcast, comedy show, podcast. Because then the second podcast is going to go on forever. If that's the format, then we're going to put Sam on the second one. Because I'm not, it's going to be fun, and I don't want to limit that one. You know what I'm saying? And it's not a slight against the other guests. It's just that I know that's going to be a banger. So to cram that in within an hour for sure, I think is detrimental.
Yeah.
So, and plus this is a lot of effort. Doing this with the research and how much I have to talk is harder on me than doing the comedy show. I know that's memorized backwards and forwards. This is research that I've done and written out, and then have to go back through and read it for over an hour.
Yeah, the thing is, Chris does a majority of the research, and sometimes, he'll go, hey, what should we do? I might come up with a topic. He may come up with a topic. I just get fucking hammered, and then we discuss it, and I might, do a little bit of research so we somewhat know what we're talking about, and I just get fucked up and then make some comments. People like it. But Chris really puts in a shitload of effort in this, so to see it live will probably be, it'll be pretty fucking cool, man, because he's a smart motherfucker, so.
What I'm getting at is that it's more of an exertion of effort. And it's not that it's, fucking daunting and hard on me. We're going to have a great time. All I'm saying is that we're trying to figure out the format. We have not done a live podcast yet. So we're just trying to figure it out, man, and it's going to be a ton of fun. If you do... All I'm trying to get at with my suggestion is if you want to come, I would say your best bet for right now is to plan on being there at 7 o'clock. It's a Sunday. You're going to come in. You're going to watch me, Sam, Mark do some comedy. And that's going to be a blast. And then we're going to chug a beer, set our podcast shit up, and blast through a tremendous podcasting event. And you want to be there for that. So come in. I want fans of the podcast there because otherwise the comedy shows there are huge by themselves. So That's what I'm trying to get at. That's the 20 minutes that I'm just first of all, I've been off Adderall. I'm back on. I'm flying high again. I just slammed a coffee too on top of taking an Adderall while ago. I'm going. So just be there at 7 o'clock. Make that plan now. If that changes, I'll let you know. But I want you there for the podcast, and I don't want a bunch of people who just want to see me and Sam do comedy. I want the real fans. You know what I'm saying? So come at 7. If we talked and I told you your name is on and you're good to go, still be there early, but I will make sure to accommodate you. That's it for the show. That was long as fuck. Quick business again. If you like this podcast and you want to help us out, something super simple, just give us a 5-star review and make a comment on iTunes. You do not have to say anything in specific. It's not to stroke me and Buddy's ego about doing a good job. It's just the way that this business is. The only way to get your podcast on the charts is to have interaction. And that's only assumed. You know, Apple does not give out their information. You cannot see how many subscribers you have. You can use an outside service to see how many people listen. It's a mystery, but I do know, we all know, that the more interactions that you have with your podcast, you're going to be moving up the charts. Now, we have been, and you can't tell who does what. You just have to know how to snoop around. We've been so close to breaching the top 200 podcasts. And then the number 1 podcast is getting 30 million listens for a week. We're not anywhere within that realm, but there's a big gap between the top and bottom. It gets the top 200. And once you get into that thing, if you can stay there, that's where you start getting sponsorships and things like that. We don't do this for money at all, but you know, it makes it easier, and that's all we want, is to ease this and do more things that are hilarious. That's really my whole goal in life, is to get to a point where everything that I think is funny between me and my friends, we can just actualize that and then make it free entertainment. And that's the way the world's going. If you haven't seen that swing, just the way that YouTube is, free entertainment is the future. And we want to be on that wave. Some of our fans, and we're thankful, every week we get more and more reviews and responses, and we love it. Thank you so much. It really does mean a lot, because even though I say it's just a little thing to do, some of that, I mean, if you're like me, and I know we have a big metal crowd, which we should, my patience for messing with my phone and technology is not there. So believe me, just going through and doing that, I really, really appreciate that. We really, really appreciate that. We have some people that listen that are blowing us away by becoming patrons. Patreon.com/deathmetaldicks. That's a website where they made it so you can connect more and support artists that you appreciate what they're doing, that do a free sort of art. We've got different things that we reward patrons with. I just got stickers today, for example. And anyone that's a patron can expect to get a handful of those stickers. So if you're listening now, you're going to get a handful of stickers. Just hit me with your address and I'll lace you up in the sticker game. Some people have hit me up about they don't want to do a monthly service. They just want to do a one-time donation. You can do that now. It's deathmetaldicks@paypal.com if you do PayPal. Also, KRISTOFER Pierce, PIERCE on Venmo, just like that. You can send us a one-time donation if that's something you want to do. Again, we're just blown away that people are listening to this podcast.
I talk to people almost every day, and sometimes it's not necessarily about the podcast. It'll be just about like, hey, I've been listening to this. Have you listened to this band? And I enjoy that because we're both like avid metalheads, and we want to know about like what's a fucking kick-ass black metal band, or what's a kick-ass, who's got the heaviest fucking riffs right now? What's a band? Yeah. And I love that shit, man. And it does. Sometimes it's like, oh man, I haven't talked to you and responded to you for 3 days, but it is because we get bombarded. Yeah. But it doesn't have anything to do with like us being, fuck this, we're blowing it off. We truly do care about everybody.
Absolutely. And we're accessible. Awesome, and again, we started doing this podcast. We did not expect to have the size of audience we have already. And so we're learning along with that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, all we want to do is connect with people that we wouldn't normally connect with. I mean, one of the things I've always loved about metal and even comedy is just the ability to I'm not talking like I am so over social networking, social media. It's a necessary evil in my life at this point, but just the connection that people have always had through music, through interest in serial killers, the shit that we're into. I mean, tape trading, it's a great thing. We all have a common ground here. We want to talk, so feel free to hit us up anytime. We're always out here for you. I feel like that. I told myself in my head, like, hey, let's make this segment shorter than ever, and we blew it out. But again, I mean, the main point